Okay, chapter 17 and 18. We're going to follow Rostov here. He is given a commission to take some orders either to Kutuzov, or he happens to see the Tsar first. You know, he's not particularly special. He's just the one that was chosen and seen to go. And he's in this very buoyant, optimistic mood at the beginning of this charge he's given. Rostov, after getting a few hours' sleep before, felt cheerful, resolute, and fearless, with a buoyant movement, confidence in his luck, and in the frame of mind in which everything seems possible, pleasant, and easy. And so throughout this whole day, we'll see Rostov. He begins in this optimistic mood, and he continues on until he just sort of has this whole narrative, this whole story of just this single day of traveling through the army to the front line, and it just slowly changes as he goes. The idea of defeat in flight was inconceivable to Rostov, though he saw the French cannon and French troops on the Pratzen Heights, on the very spot where he had been told to look for the commander-in-chief. He could not and would not believe that. And so as he's proceeded so far, and he starts running into the actual soldiers who were in the battle, and a lot of them are retreating, some of them are wounded, and he's getting near the place where he thinks these commanders are, but it's like it's chaotic. And so there's a bit of doubt creeping into Rostov's mind. And it's just funny. This is like typical Nikolai. He's like, he is just like a small boy with these ideals and idealism, and you just can't shake him from it. You know, he's already had these experiences with the bridge and in battle falling off his horse, and here he is again. Just his brain just snaps back to this kind of very patriotic, hurrah, we're going to win thing, his idolization of the Tsar. And again, he's facing this chaos of the war, and it's just confusing for him once again. And then there's this one paragraph I particularly like. He rode on to the place where the greatest number of men had been killed while fleeing from Pratzen. The French had not yet occupied that region, and the Russians, those who were unhurt or only slightly wounded, had long since abandoned it. So it's kind of this no man's land. It's where the Russians used to be. The French had cannonaded it, just devastated it, but they haven't got there yet. So there's this kind of like this vacant space. All about the field lay heaps of manure. On well-kept plowland lay the dead and wounded, 10 or 15 to every couple of acres. Like heaps of manure were these dead and wounded. The wounded had crawled together in 2 or 3s, and one could hear their distressing cries and groans, which sometimes seemed feigned to Rostov. He put his horse to a trot to avoid seeing all these suffering men, and he felt afraid. Afraid not for his life, but for the courage he needed, in which he knew he could not withstand the sight of all those unfortunates. You know, this is just like starkly contrasted to this, you know, remember way back at his parents' place, they're having that evening party, and he just stood up and just like, we have to do whatever the Tsar wants. And everybody's around him is kind of like, okay, young man, we agree with you, kind of golf clap, but just like tone it down a bit. We're trying to have a party here. And so there's this in him, which it just keeps coming to the bubbling out of him. And yet here he is, actually where the battle takes place. There's these wounded. And he has this one bit of clarity within him that sort of speaks the truth to him. He doesn't have what it takes. He just has this glimpse of realizing how is it. He put his horse to a trot to avoid seeing all these suffering men. afraid not for his life, but for the courage he needed, and which he knew he could not withstand. So I kind of find that one an interesting bit. And then he actually stumbles into where the Tsar is. And so it's been such a chaotic, they've been retreating, people are retreating, and there's the Tsar, strangely by himself. And this surprises Rostov. And he just goes through this whole psychological thing. Like this is his hero. This is the God on earth for Rostov. And he goes through this whole mental thing. You know, it's the very thing he could have dreamed on and he dreams of meeting the Tsar and helping him and showing him his devotion to him. But his mind goes through this whole calculation about how it would be improper for him to go to the Tsar. It's really quite convoluted, actually. So Rostov, now that he had attained what he longed for more than anything in the world, did not know how to approach the Tsar. And thousands of reasons of why it would be inexpedient, improper, and impossible came to his mind. And he just goes on with this thought process, and he comes convinced of himself of just the opposite, that it would be improper for him to go help the Tsar, even though it looked like the Tsar could very much just use a friend at that moment, just to help him along. And so he leaves. And this is like a very tragic for poor Nikolai, that he makes that choice, that his mind convinces him of that. And he's just a little way away, and this other captain comes up and immediately goes to see the Tsar, and Rostov turns and sees this, and he's just, you know, I feel kind of sorry for him, but he's like, you know, this Nikolai guy, he's just like a little boy, it really seems, but I feel sorry for him. And Rostov saw with envy and remorse how this other fellow, von Toll, spoke warmly and at length to the Tsar, and how the Tsar, evidently weeping, covered his eyes and pressed von Toll's hand. And Rostov's just in mourning here. And I might have been in his place, thought Rostov. And hardly able to restrain his tears of pity for the Tsar, he rode off in utter despair, not knowing where he was going or for what purpose. His despair was the greater for feeling that his own weakness was the cause of his grief. Oh, I feel kind of sorry for him, but he's like, I don't know, man. In Nikolai, you really see this overconfident type of mental expression. You know, it's personified in Nikolai. He knows what is right. He knows what is honorable. He knows what he's going to do. He imagines all the things. And then he just continually, life just is much more messy, much more hard. It reminds me of something my daughter sent me that Tolstoy actually wrote in maybe his diary or something. One day he had this clarity. You know, I've realized that all there is in life is to work and to love. Just love people and just get to work. So this is his entry in the diary. And then the next day the entry is, too tired, didn't work, didn't love. And so, you know, it's like Rostov is sort of a personification of that. Having these ideals, and then life just keeps, I don't know, bringing the person out of their head and seeing, you know, it's not like that at all. There's something else you're missing. Anyway, I find this a little bit entertaining. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the battle had been lost at all points. More than 100 cannons were now in the hands of the French. And columns, having lost about half their men, were retreating in disorganized mobs. And that was kind of the heart of it. And there's this just last scene where these troops are retreating. They're on this dam. And I kind of found this little section poetic as well. He's just discussing this dam and there's this kind of frozen, the dam in front of the frozen is this water, but it's just a thin bit of ice. And these men are retreating, and the French are still throwing cannons at it. And dusk was falling. And the passage just speaks about, on this dam, for so many years, the old miller used to sit in his peaked cap peacefully angling, while his grandson, with his shirt sleeves rolled up, playing with the wriggling silvery fish in the water can. On that dam along which, for so many years, Moravians in shaggy caps and blue jackets has peacefully driven their 2-horse carts, loaded with wheat to the mill, and dusty with flour that whitened their carts, had driven back again on that same narrow dam. But now, among wagons and cannons, under horses' hooves and between wagon wheels, now huddled men with faces distorted by fear of death, crushing one another, expiring, stepping over the dying, killing one another, only to move on a few steps to be themselves killed in the same way. And so it's kind of just really this desperate scene. So it kind of almost bookends these two chapters. At first we have Nikolai just buoyant, optimistic, youthful, and here this very sad scene of these men dying. And that is those two chapters, mostly about Nikolai, but just how the battle turned, and Russians were defeated in that situation. And mostly we were carried along by Nikolai's experience of it all, in internally just seeing his own emotion, his own narrative again. You can see how it really contrasts with Andrei's experience. You know, they're very near one another. You know, Andrei just might be over the hill over there. You know, he was injured, perhaps dying. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. In the next chapter, I'm really looking forward to the next chapter, the last chapter of book 1. Congratulations if you made it this far. Really looking forward to that next chapter.